In today's video, we're going to review the capabilities within Redwood Finance Automation around intercompany processes. And this first process is going to be intercompany reconciliation. And this is a pretty standard way that organizations handle intercompany, which is to reconcile the differences between trading partners and then potentially making a reversing accrual at period end to eliminate any balances. These are typically scheduled, but for today's demonstration, what I'm going to do is to go into the intercompany section, and I'm going to manually start the process by selecting intercompany recon and confirming that I want to run this process. Now, as with any automation, true automation, this is going to be invisible and autonomous. But what you will see happening behind the scenes are every step that's happening within the intercompany reconciliation process. A lot of this is going to be displayed in my inbox, and as I receive mails in my email client, I will show you exactly what's happening. One of the key components that takes place within this intercompany reconciliation process is after we've retrieved the data from both sides of the trading partners is we're going to perform a matching routine. I'm going to review the matching routine after this is complete to show you the power of the way that Redwood Automation can match two sides or trading partners or really any two sources of data and some of the rules that can be applied in order to, in this case, find differences that then can be resolved by a party in the business. So as you can see, we've received the data from our ERP system in this case. We've gone through some transformation of this data, which is really preparing us for the matching, and we've created a list of differences. If I go over to the emails that have come in, what you'll see is that for 4 separate company codes, I've included differences that were found once we've matched both trading partners and we found the items that didn't agree. So let me click on one of these mails to show you what has happened. So this is specifically to company code 2100. And the user is alerted that we have found several items to where there was a discrepancy in one or more of the data points for the line item lists. Each company code will receive an email like this to summarize differences that were found with their individual trading partners. Now, since I've just reviewed that email, you'll also see that what's happened is within these lists of differences, automation has already taken those differences and used that data to create a journal entry so we can post a reversing accrual to clear those items for this period and push them to the next period so that we can resolve those. We'll review the more proactive way to resolve those issues when we review intercompany agreement in the second part of this video. So based on the differences that I just found for company code 2100, I can see that an intercompany posting has been created. And if I need to review this attachment, I have the Excel that's been created along with the email that was sent previously that shows me the differences between my trading counterpart. And here you can see all of those line items that have been created, and you can see that the type of journal that I've made is accrual, so the next period we will reverse this entry. And then we have the ability within the next period to clear this item up in a proper way. After all the accruals have been posted, I'll receive a summary that will show me the balances and the total amount posted in between trading partners. And that will really complete the intercompany reconciliation process. So just kind of to highlight what's happened, each individual company code in this case have received an email with its counterparty to show the differences that were found once we've gone through the complex matching for two sides. The list of differences are then used to create an accrual, which will be reversed in the next period. Those exceptions won't necessarily go away. We'll have to correct those in the next period. And again, we can look at managing that in a more proactive way within our company agreement, which we'll review later. But basically, we have made the accrual, and we also receive a month-end summary balance report. So as mentioned in the intercompany reconciliation process, one of the key areas that needs to be considered is how we're matching the data. So wanted to go through just a quick kind of overview of how Redwood Automation can match data. Again, this could be any type of matching. It could be bank reconciliation, which is a pretty common one. In this case, we're actually using data from an ERP system. So you can see that we have pulled really two sources of data here. This is coming directly from the ERP system. This could be a payables file and a receivables file between the two trading partners. And we're actually converting that format into what is called an RTX format. So then we can start to perform the data manipulation to that. So this whole area is really using, extraction from ERP. It's using a data transformer to change the format of the data and then putting that into the data transformation capabilities of the solution. So what I'm going to do is just highlight what has been done with this data. The first thing I want to go through is let's look at the rule sets that were applied. So we have several different rule sets. We have source A data. So again, let's just say this is my payables file. I have source B data. I've created a mapping table, which I'll explain how that's used in a minute. And then we've got three different matching stages where we apply various rules to really get down to just the exceptions that need to be managed, or in the case of this reconciliation where the accrual needs to be made, which is the final step, is really exporting that data so that we can use that, present the differences to the interested parties of the different company codes, the differences between their counterparty or trading partner, and it's the data that is being used to create the accrual in our example. So what we have here is I am on source A. So we have a list of all of the items that were in our ERP system from source A. And we've, again, taken that data format and put it into what we call is an RTX format, so we can start to do things such as, you can see the rules that were applied. We edited a column here. We deleted some columns that maybe didn't add value into what we were trying to do. And we've also changed some different types of formats. Maybe we need to convert a dollar amount to, from a European format to, the US format, right? So then we can truly kind of match between these two sources. The same thing with my source B. We want to get rid of some of the columns that don't add value, and we want to edit the columns so that we have a natural type of data format that we can use when we combine and match these two sets of data so we can find the true exceptions. The mapping table in this case was used to change one of the fields or one of the columns to match what is in the other source. So for example, if we have a code on one side that really doesn't add any value or any relevance to the other side, what we can potentially do is use the mapping table to change that code in source A, for example, to the equivalent terminology that might be in source B, and then that becomes a valuable field that we can use to match on. Now what you'll see here is we want to take a, kind of a broad swipe at trying to match as many of the items that we can. A lot of times these are, you're matching one-to-one items or maybe many-to-one items, but you're trying to work on an exact match. So let's take a look at what we've matched in this case. So the first rule set that we created is really to look at a GL code and date as our two matching fields. And if we look at what we're trying to match on is the amount, but we want the amount to have zero tolerance in it. So the amounts must match exactly. So the date must be an exact match, the GL code must be an exact match, and so the amount needs to be an exact match as well. Once we've ran that matching routine, we've gotten rid of these items, and now we have some remaining items from both sources that we need to then go in there and try to match as well. In this case, we found several other items that could potentially match. And if we look at how we've matched on this item, now we've loosened the restrictions, if you will. We're looking specifically at a date. We're not concerned about a GL code in this case, but we do need the amount to match and match to zero. So we have zero threshold built in between the payer and the receivable side, or whatever sources we're matching from. Finally, we want to run one more matching stage, and again, you can run as many matching rules or stages as you want to on this. This is the final one, and we want to look for potentially any other items that might match. And so for this item, we've actually created a rule to where we are only matching on date, and we're looking at the amount, but in this case, they do not have to be an exact match. We are looking for anything that's within a plus or minus 200 dollars, euros, whatever amount you're trying to match on. So once we ran this rule, we actually came up with another 3 or 4 or 5 different matching items that now we've eliminated. The last step here is just simply our export, otherwise exceptions. These are the items that once we've ran all of our matching stages, these are left over. And in our intercompany reconciliation example, these are the ones to where we are using this export to be able to create, in our case, the reversing accrual for the different company codes for their corresponding trading partner. So one of the ways that we can do that here is to use a functionality which is called bursting, and the burster can pick any one of these fields and use that as a way to export. So for example, let's just say we have a list of values that may be inclusive of our 4 different company codes, but yet we don't need to send every company code, every item that's not relevant to their company code. So we could use that field to burst on, which we did. We took the completed file and then we bursted into 4 different company codes and sent that to each controller so they each had their own unique report, list of differences, and journal that was created for those discrepancies. So that wraps up the overview of the intercompany reconciliation. Again, we'll go through what we consider to be the more proactive way to handle your intercompany issues, and that would be by focusing on the intercompany agreements that exist between trading partners so that you can manage those relationships up front versus managing on the back end like the intercompany reconciliation where you are reactively finding differences that need to be resolved versus proactively correcting those up front before the trade or the exchange is made between the counterparties. So now we're going to look at intercompany agreement, and this is really the more proactive way to look at intercompany. And instead of really performing the reconciliation during period end close and finding the differences and maybe creating the accrual, in this case we're actually going to, at the front end, manage our intercompany agreements between trading partners so that we know immediately if the master data is followed, then the process should run correctly without the differences. So I'm going to step into intercompany within the platform, and I'm going to click on intercompany agreement. And in this case, you see that I've got 2 different types of intercompany charges that I can manage, and I'm going to run what's called marketing charges. First of all, it's actually going to retrieve the agreement spreadsheet that we've put together so that we can actually go in and manage and choose and look at the different products that we may want to use or services that we may want to purchase from our counterparty. So what's happened here is I've been delivered the spreadsheet, which I can click on now, and I can look here in the spreadsheet. I can see the different data that exists. So let's say, for example, I've got responsibility as a buyer for company code 2200. If I look at the items that I can buy from company code 1000, I can see the different information. So you'll see the different titles up at top from the buyer's company code, which would be myself, the description of the services, the amount, the currency, and then a lot of other information that will be used in order for me to make this particular purchase. If there are things that I don't agree with, or if I need to change the net amount, I have the ability to change that information directly here in the browser. And then when I close this, I can actually just go ahead and accept the agreement directly from my inbox and start the intercompany process. Now, as with the other process, we're going to be managing all of this through our inbox, because when the automation is happening behind the scene, this is literally how end users can deal with true automation. So you see that I've received 1 mail that's come in already, and this was simply the same email that I looked at in my inbox, and I had already made the request by submitting the Excel spreadsheet, which contained the line items of what I could buy from company code 1000 and what the unit price was and all the other information that was needed. You're going to see me take on different personas as the mails come into my inbox. In this case, I am now the seller, and I've received purchase order requests for 2 different trading partners. And if I go in here, I can actually see that there has been a request from partner 2200, which is the one that we saw in the spreadsheet, who's buying from company code 1000. And here it's listing out the items that I chose to purchase here. So I've got 4 different items with all the data that I need, including the unit price and the currency.
And if I, as the seller, am happy and content that these are the correct amounts and the correct description for the services that I'm requesting, I can simply process this request directly here, which will take me into my inbox, and you'll see the same information that you saw in the email, but now I have the ability to accept this request and continue the workflow for the intercompany agreement process. The next notifications that we'll be receiving are actually creating a purchase order and a sales order in SAP for this instance. And then finally, we'll get a summary of every transaction that's happened, including all the relative purchase order numbers, sales order numbers, billing document numbers, and invoice numbers. And once we receive that final notification, we'll go ahead and take a peek in SAP so you can see that the actual billing document or the purchase order was actually put into the right transaction, and that data is actually in SAP in this case. So here you'll see the first notification that's come in for company code 2200, since that was the one that I approved directly here. So we can see that a purchase order was created. Finally, we can see that we have successfully generated an invoice in the ERP system, SAP in this case. We've also created the sales order. And finally, we're getting the intercompany agreement process summary email. So when I click on that, I'll see that on the buyer side, we created a purchase order and an invoice. On the seller side, we created a sales order and a billing document. And if I want to search these up, it's telling me that I can look in the target SAP system. So for example, let's go ahead and just copy this purchase order number here. And what you'll see is the line items. Here's the purchase order number. Here's the information, the line items that we approved as the seller. You can see these were created. These were the amounts that we agreed to. These were the descriptions. These are all the 4 items that the buyer submitted a request for that the seller approved, that went through and generated the sales order, purchase order, invoice number, and billing document. So this concludes the video for the intercompany capabilities within Redwood Finance Automation. Feel free to check out the other videos that we have posted, and thank you for watching.